Let's turn our focus to this now. The hospitality industry in KwaZulu-Natal has raised concerns about an increase in reservation cancellations, mostly by international tourists. The industry attributed this to the discovery of the new COVID-19 variant Omicron and a sudden increase of cases in the country. Now let's discuss this. We're joined via Zoom by Phindile Makwakwa KwaZulu-Natal Tourism Acting CEO. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Phindile, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, recently Tourism KZN is projecting that occupancy rates across the province will not go beyond 60% over the upcoming holiday season. To what extent is this, attributed to the Omicron variant? And also, how concerned are you about this upcoming holiday?
Maybe just to indicate that, our projections at this point are quite conservative. Mm-hmm. And why are we being conservative? It's because of the trend of bookings that we've seen. Of course, when we went into fourth wave, it did lead to quite a bit of panic. And so we are getting a situation where there are last-minute bookings. Just also to clarify the fact that, of course, for KwaZulu-Natal, during the festive season, we don't attract so much as the international tourists as much as domestic tourists. So our projections certainly are for the domestic numbers. Of course, we continue being worried about the behavior of the variant. And so we've partnered very closely with our tourism trade partners, as well as the KZN Department of Health, to actually have pop-up vaccination sites that are driving a message of jab for tourism, because we really do believe that those within the sector need to demonstrate that we are serious about the safety of our tourists by being vaccinated. And of course, in return, encourage our tourists to vaccinate as well.
Now, just talking about safety and how you are prioritizing it, and now as the province, how are you going to ensure safety for travelers and local residents? Are there any initiatives that you've introduced, particularly during this time?
So we've started really last year when we went into hard lockdown. We partnered with the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. When the tourism protocols were developed, the health and safety protocols, we worked very closely with them to train our different partners in the tourism value chain and to really just, recognize those trained through certification. And so our main focus is to say our tourism experiences, tourism products, and all the other activities that tourists will have in our province, we are guaranteeing you safety in as far as the sector making sure that we abide by those protocols, which is very important. So it is something, as simple as when you're in a hotel and you're being served breakfast and, you actually have waiters serving you instead of you dishing for yourself when you're having a buffet. And those things really go a long way in terms of making sure that people not only feel safe, but are safe. And of course, distancing at restaurants and a whole lot of different activities. And so we started already last year, and we continue in that vein while driving the vaccination message, because we do believe that without us being vaccinated and without South Africa meeting its targets, if there are new variants, we're going to continue seeing what has happened, where we are put back on red lists. And so the sector really is very hard hit, and it is upon us working together to make sure that we don't only stay above waters, but we are able to recover the sector and sustain jobs and grow, really, while we deal with the reality of COVID-19.
With indications already saying that Gauteng is already at its peak of this fourth wave, we're already starting to see those numbers in terms of infections growing in KwaZulu-Natal. In fact, KwaZulu-Natal now being earmarked as, the province that's going to overtake Gauteng. How concerned are you with these numbers, given the fact that you've already got these safety plans in place in the province?
We're certainly concerned. I mean, if you look at the festive season last year and us going into a third wave as the country, and of course the Gauteng numbers being our key source market domestically, it led to a number of initiatives, one of which was the closure of our coastline during your peak holiday, which is, days like the 16th of December. Of course, it's past now. But on the 24th, 25th, 26th, for instance, and I think it was between the 30th and 31st of December and 1st of January. Those interventions helped to curb the numbers. And so you saw also from a tourist behavior point of view, people started booking more inland. So we still ensured that the sector didn't really suffer as badly, although we did suffer, by putting interventions in place to manage the numbers of infections while ensuring some activity. So we are hoping, as KZN and together with our tourism trade partners, that this won't see a shutdown of the country, that interprovincial tourism will continue, but perhaps it may have to lead to tighter measures being put in place. But of course, it's an ongoing conversation around how we just make sure that the numbers don't grow without shutting down the economy. And of course, the tourism economy being part of it.
It's the 18th of December today. Have you started seeing an increase in the number of people coming into the province? And what are you expecting for the remainder of the season?
We certainly are seeing an increase. Our toll girls are very busy, and various departments, especially Department of Transport, is also ensuring road safety on our roads. And so I think people are very mindful that the gatherings that they have, they do your more intimate kind of gatherings as friends and family, and certainly less of the huge gatherings. You do know that the Rage event was cancelled, which is quite a major event. Even the KZN provincial government decided that this festive season we will not be sponsoring any major gatherings. And so there is that shift and that awareness and that consciousness that people must really, still enjoy themselves, but travel in smaller groups, gather in smaller groups. We're finding a lot of outdoor activities. Families are really now those who wouldn't have normally explored, for instance, adventure tourism. So people are going out into the open and really enjoying nature. Game reserves, which maybe were not so popular with the domestic market as much as the internationals. We're seeing a much bigger take up, as in KZN Wildlife, for instance, which is a product of government, is showing very healthy occupancy rates in the 80s and towards the mid 80s. And of course, that's both day travelers. People now understand they can experience as a day visitor, and of course, those who stay overnight.
Phindile, how close are you with the security law enforcement services, specifically during this time, and particularly in KZN, given what we saw in July, just a few months ago? How close are you in conversation with them in terms of just the kind of plans they have in place during this festive season?
We definitely participate in the structures to coordinate for the festive season and ensuring safety. One thing I really just want to emphasize on that point, of course, we do know the issues are surrounding the July unrest, and we have assurance, and this is really just a national priority, really. And of course, KZN, and Gauteng, I suppose, were the biggest hit of the unrests in terms of preventative measures that are in place to detect some kind of security threat. I would like to believe, by virtue of how security planning is, it's information that's not necessarily divulged in public so much in the nitty-gritty detail, except to say our security structures in KZN are really on hand, are working very closely, traffic officers as well, all really the various partners that ensure the safety of citizens and the safety of our tourists. I think KZN, I'm sure you'd agree with me, is really renowned also for really just being very strict around issues of drinking and driving and visibility and enforcement. So that continues, but more on a national security front, certainly plans are in place and really people's safety can be guaranteed.
KZN is also renowned for its tourism initiatives and the industry at large, I would say. So how has the industry recovered over the last 6 months? What are some of the wins for the province?
So what we did soon after we went into hard lockdown was develop a tourism recovery plan. We have a tourism task team, really, which is a representation of our associations and of course the government structures. And what has worked very well for us in implementing that plan is putting together packages for tourists to really make sure that when we promise an exceptional experience in KZN, we'll deliver it in terms of the kind of packages and the affordability of those packages. Of course, high up, as we've discussed, issues of health and safety protocols. One thing COVID did was bring us closer to one another. So we work much closer and really 2020 saw us in terms of statistics released by South African Tourism just a couple of months ago, that KZN was the leading destination in 2020, despite, of course, COVID. And so our numbers are not the same as 2019, but in terms of our very innovative Believe It campaign, where we're saying it is the only destination to visit and you must believe it, we showed that in action. But we went further beyond talking to the consumer, where we really worked very hard with municipalities in putting incentives forth. So, for instance, B&B owners who would normally pay a commercial rate, that was converted to a residential rate by some of the municipalities. And of course, our Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs then assigned Tourism KZN to implement the Tourism Relief Fund, which is a 20 million rand fund. And that really enhanced what was already being done by the National Tourism Department. So there's been quite a few initiatives. Of course, training of our, especially small businesses, has been very critical. And also moving to the digital space, whereas we are already playing in that space prior COVID. But really marketing the destination digitally is really the way to go globally. And so we've really gone for that space, especially also making sure that we keep top of mind with our international tourists through tour operators globally in all our source markets. And of course, we are in a process of really looking at what would be the new tourist and new markets that come out from the impact of COVID-19. And so we have a really strong research team that helps us also in that regard.
Phindile Makwakwa, thank you so much for speaking to us this afternoon. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, she is the Tourism Acting CEO in KwaZulu-Natal. While from KZN to